We've been producing Shelby Year-End podcasts for a number of years now, and we thought it'd be fun to sort of jump into a Shelby time machine and go back and revisit some of our favorite moments from the past. Today, we'll be talking about these subjects: free resources, year-end differences between Shelby Next and Shelby V5, our top 3 year-end tips, and ACA reporting. So hold on as we head back into the future. All right, our first stop along the timeline is our year-end discussion podcast from January 3rd, 2012. Chris Benson and Edward O. for talking about free year-end resources. We join the conversation already in progress.
There have been a number of times throughout this video that we've referenced the community. So we just want to come back and talk about the community because there's a lot of information that's out there that will help you through your year-end process.
If you go to forums, there's one in there called Year-End Assistance, and a lot of this content actually began as internal documentation to help our support technicians get ready for supporting our customers in January. So some great content on some very specific things, all year-end related, that can be very helpful to you as you're going through your year-end procedures. One area we didn't talk much about earlier was contribution statements. Get a lot of calls on contribution statements. And in the community, there's some additional documentation on that. One that's pretty popular that might be unknown is the printer markup codes, where you can actually add bold type, change the font size of different parts of your contribution statements, add graphics like a church logo. These are things a lot of customers don't even know you can do.
Yeah, and as we discuss contribution statements and some of the helps that are in the community, that reminded me that there are some webinars that our training department offers, and there's actually a year-end tips webinar that talks about closing your contribution year and running giving statements. And then there's a second one out here. It's a year-end part 2, just tips part 2, that's closing your financial year and running year-end reports. There's a third webinar out here that we think would help you with your 1099s, and it's just titled 1099s, Everything You Need to Know to Get Them Ready Without Losing Your Mind. So that sounds like something that would be helpful to you during January.
Because of the higher call volume in January, there may be some periods that you're unable to get through to us on the phone. And we also offer additional ways to contact support. You can send an email to support@shelbyinc.com, and normally we respond to those emails within 24 hours. And in addition to that, we have live support, where you can actually chat with a support technician live. We have a link at the top of the community page called Live Support, and click on that, type in your question, and you'll be connected to a live support technician that can chat with you online and help you resolve your issue.
Next, we visit our friend Jeff Johnson from the Top 10 Tips and Tricks podcast back on January 2nd, 2013. Now, he's going to give us 3 of the top 10 tips: closing procedure, membership, and number 1, you should know this one by now.
For this year, our number 10 tip is to use the General Ledger Fiscal Year Closing Utility. Why? Because this one tip does 4 things for you automatically. It will roll over your chart of accounts from this year to the next year if you haven't created a chart yet. It will roll up the transactions of our income and expense accounts into their respective closing accounts, and it will give you a report showing that activity. And then it sets the opening balances for the new year automatically, which is a great tool there. And it will give you the option to close your current year and open the new year for transactions, so it will prevent making transactions into the prior year by accident. So that is our first tip: use the General Ledger Fiscal Year Closing Utility. All right, tip number 6 is about membership. And not a financial module, but there are still some cleanup activities that should be done on a periodic basis, such as purging names from the membership module that are marked for deletion, maybe deleting unreferenced names from GlobalFile. So on an annual basis, around the turn of the year, it's a good time to make your database lean, clean, and ready for 2013. And our number 1 tip for 2012-2013 is back up your data. Of course, it's the same tip as 2009's number 1 tip, but this time I want to encourage you to back up Shelby DB Purge as well as your main Shelby DB database. Shelby DB Purge is where all that financially purged data is going to live next door to your live Shelby DB. So make sure you back it up. You may not have to back it up nightly because you won't be purging nightly, but make sure you have it on a schedule, and then make sure that, like Shelby DB, you have it backed up to tape or other media that you can take off site and keep that safe.
As we continue with our year-end best of topics, we meet with Edward Oaf once again. He's going to tell us about some important differences between Shelby Next and Shelby V5. This comes from the December 2nd, 2014 podcast.
The year-end process, between V5 and Shelby Financials is very similar. Both products, you close the year-end general ledger, and that pushes the balances forward to the new year. Shelby Financials does offer some new enhancements that V5 doesn't have. It kind of streamlines the process a little bit. It tracks and saves the history of when you close the year and who closes the year. And you can also go back and review the report that generated when you closed the year. Probably the main year-end issue to consider both in V5 and Shelby Financials is tax forms. In payroll and accounts payable, you can run the W-2 edit list and the 1099 edit list. Those reports can be reviewed, look for some errors, and correcting those errors is actually the same in both systems. It's a very easy transition.
As we work our way back toward the present, we continue with a recent podcast from November 9, 2015. Are you going to be required to file ACA information with the government this year? Let's check in with Keith Milford and find out.
Well, ACA stands for the Affordable Care Act, and it will affect those employers who have 50 or more full-time equivalent employees, or those employers that are self-insured. Well, you've probably heard of the Affordable Care Act, and what you will be required to do if you are one of those employers is to file health coverage information to the government. My first piece of advice would be to go to the IRS website and download the 1094 and 1095B and C forms and their instructions, and make sure you are well familiar with all those instructions and know what type of data you'll be required to file. Yes, we do have a document, and it will be available for you at the bottom of this podcast. It'll have things in it such as a link to the IRS website so that you can calculate the number of full-time equivalent employees you do have. It will help you find out which form that your ministry will need to use. So if you're somebody that learns by reading, you could probably use this document. If you're more visual in nature, then you can use the video that we've recorded.
Before we go, here's a reminder for the 2015 year-end to take advantage of the new tax legislation that goes into effect this year. V5 customers will need to have installed the V5.15.2000 release and any additional service packs. And Shelby Next customers will need to have the Shelby Next Financials Release 6.0 installed and any additional patches. To download the 2015 year-end update, just visit the community, click the appropriate software package, go to the Downloads page, and then download and install the latest release. We hope that this review of some of our most helpful year-end podcasts has answered some of your questions and given you some good tips. You can see more year-end podcasts by clicking the links below. And keep in mind that Shelby Systems is standing by to answer your year-end questions in the month of January. Remember, you can email us, you can visit the community, or you can call us. We look forward to helping you in 2016.